Hi, boys and girls. I am going to teach you one of my favorite poems today. It's called Mr. Wiggle and Mr. Waggle. And there is the mailbox where Mr. Wiggle lives. Mr. Wiggle and Mr. Waggle are best friends. They really like to hang out with each other. So here's our story for today. Would you please show me Mr. Wiggle? That's right, and show me Mr. Waggle. Yeah, they're best friends. Let's put them in their houses. Close their doors. All right, here we go. Hold your hands up. One day, Mr. Wiggle decided he was going to visit his Mr. friend, Mr. Waggle. So he opened his door. He popped outside. He closed his door. And he went to visit Mr. Waggle. He went up the mountain and down the mountain and up the mountain and down the mountain and up the mountain and down the mountain until he got to Mr. Waggle's house. He knocked on his door. He called out his name, Mr. Waggles! And he listened, but he didn't hear anything, and nobody opened the door. Mr. Wiggle was very sad because he really wanted to talk to Mr. Waggles, but nobody was there, so he went back home again. Up the mountain and down the mountain and up the mountain and down the mountain and up the mountain and down the mountain till he got back to his house. He opened his door. He popped inside. He closed his door. And he went to sleep. The next day, Mr. Waggles thought, I want to go see my friend Mr. Wiggles. So he went on a walk. But first, he opened his door. He popped outside. He closed his door. And he went on a walk. Up the mountain and down the mountain and up the mountain and down the mountain and up the mountain and down the mountain until he got to his friend Mr. Wiggles' house. He knocked on his door. He called out his name, Mr. Wiggles. He has a low voice. Mr. Wiggles. And he listened, but he didn't hear anything. Mr. Wiggles wasn't home. Mr. Waggles was very sad because he really wanted to see his friend, but nobody answered the door, so he had to go back home again. He went up the mountain and down the mountain and up the mountain and down the mountain and up the mountain and down the mountain until he got back to his house. He opened his door. He popped inside. Pop, and he closed his door. And he went to sleep. The next morning, both Mr. Wiggles and Mr. Waggles really wanted to talk to each other. They had a new game they wanted to play. They had a new joke they wanted to tell each other. And they wanted to have lunch together. So they both opened their doors. They both popped outside. They both closed their doors. And they both went to each other's houses. They went up the mountain and down the mountain and up the mountain and down the mountain and up the mountain and down until they got to each other. They saw each other. They were so excited. Hi, how are you? And they talked and they talked and they talked and they talked. And then they played their video game, their new video game. They told each other a joke. Knock, knock. Who's there? Orange, orange you. Orange you, glad I didn't say banana. And they ate lunch. They had spaghetti for lunch. And they both slurped up their noodles. Finally, it was nighttime, and they knew they needed to go back home again, so they said goodbye to each other. Goodbye. And because it was night and it was dark, they wanted to be very careful. They slowly went up the mountain and down the mountain and up the mountain and down the mountain and up the mountain and down the mountain. So they got back to their houses. They opened their doors. They popped inside. They closed their doors. They both went to bed, and they dreamed happy dreams about their friend, Mr. Wiggles and Mr. Waggle.